The moment my brother's wedding coordinator handed me a table card with the number 11 on it, I already knew. Table 11. All the way in the back. Next to the catering station where the servers kept disappearing in and out with trays. I stood there holding that little card, in the dress I'd spent 3 weeks looking for, and I did the math in my head. 32 people at this wedding, 11 tables. My brother's closest college friends were at table 3. His co-workers at table 5. I was at table 11. I smiled at the coordinator. I said, "Thank you." And I walked to my seat. That was the moment I realized something had shifted inside me. Not broke. Shh. Like when you've been carrying something heavy for so long that you stop feeling the weight, and then one day you set it down and your whole body tilts sideways. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me tell you how we got here. My brother Trevor is 3 years younger than me. He's always been the one my parents held up. The easy kid, the charming one, the one who never caused problems and never needed to be told twice. And I never resented him for that. I want to be clear about that. I loved my brother. I still do, in the way you love someone who's become a stranger inside a familiar face. Growing up, I was the responsible one by default. My mom worked double shifts at the hospital most of my teenage years, and my dad traveled for work, so I was the one who made sure Trevor had dinner, helped him with his homework, drove him to soccer practice when he was in middle school, and I'd just gotten my license at 16. I didn't do it because anyone asked. I did it because it needed to be done and I was there. By the time I was 28, I had a decent job in healthcare billing, a small apartment I was proud of, and a savings account I'd built from scratch. Trevor was 25, living with his girlfriend Melissa, and had just started a new job that he said was finally the one. He'd had 6 of those in 4 years. The first time I lent him money, it was $1,500. His car had broken down and he couldn't make rent, and he had that voice. That cracking, embarrassed voice he got when he was ashamed. And I said yes before he even finished asking. He paid me back $300 of it over the next 8 months and then stopped mentioning it. The second time was $3,200. A medical bill from when Melissa had an emergency. I didn't hesitate. That's what family does. The third time was $400. He was starting a small business, he said. He had a plan. He showed me a spreadsheet. I should have asked more questions. I didn't. By the time Melissa and Trevor got engaged, he owed me $14,900. Not including the birthday money I'd floated him, or the groceries I'd bought when I visited and quietly stocked their kitchen without saying anything, or the time I paid his electric bill because they were 3 months behind and the shutoff notice was sitting on his counter and I just couldn't let it happen. When he called to tell me he was proposing to Melissa, I cried. Happy tears. I loved Melissa, genuinely. She was warm and funny, and she made my brother smile in a way I hadn't seen since we were kids. I told him I was so happy for him. I meant it. He asked me to be part of the wedding. "We want you involved," he said. "You're the most important person to me." I remember exactly where I was standing when he said that. In my kitchen, making coffee, still in my pajamas on a Sunday morning. I felt full of something good. That was 14 months before the wedding. The first sign came 3 months in, when Melissa and I went to look at venues together. Her mother, Linda, came along. Linda is the kind of woman who takes up space in a room not because she's loud, but because she makes you feel like you need her permission to breathe. She looked at me once, smiled thinly, and spent the rest of the afternoon talking to Melissa like I wasn't there. I told myself she was just nervous. Mothers of brides are stressed. The second sign came when the bridal party was announced. Melissa had 4 bridesmaids, her sister, 2 college friends, and her best friend from childhood. Trevor had 4 groomsmen. I was not a bridesmaid. I hadn't expected to be exactly, but Trevor hadn't mentioned it either way, and when the announcement went on social media and I wasn't in the photo, something small inside me went quiet. I didn't say anything. I told myself it was their day. I told myself it didn't matter. The third sign came 6 weeks before the wedding, when I called my mom to ask about the seating chart. I'd offered to help with arrangements early on and had heard nothing back. My mom got a little vague on the phone. "Melissa's mom is handling most of that," she said. "I'm sure it's fine." I should have pressed. I didn't. The fourth sign, and this one I can't explain away, I know I can't, came the week before the wedding when I asked Trevor directly where I'd be sitting at the reception. He said, "Oh, don't worry about it, it's all figured out." He was distracted, running on adrenaline, and I let it go because I didn't want to add to his stress. That was a mistake. The wedding ceremony was beautiful. I'll say that honestly. The venue was a converted barn in the countryside 2 hours from where we grew up, all white string lights and sunflowers and the smell of cedar. Melissa looked stunning. Trevor cried when he saw her. I cried too in the third row, next to my aunt from Phoenix. At the reception, after the cocktail hour, when everyone moved inside to find their seats, that's when I got the card. Table 11. I found it tucked into the little arrangement at the place setting. My name written in careful calligraphy. Laurel. The table was near the back of the room beside a service corridor the catering staff used. It seated 8 people, 2 of Melissa's co-workers I'd never met, a neighbor of Linda's who seemed confused about why she'd been invited at all, and 4 people I couldn't immediately place. My family. My mom, my dad, my aunt, my cousins were at tables 2 and 3, close to the couple, where the laughter was loudest. I sat down. I put my clutch on the table. I folded my hands in my lap. One of Melissa's co-workers, a friendly woman named April, leaned over and introduced herself. I smiled and said my name, and she said, "Oh, are you a friend of Melissa's from work?" And I said, "No, I'm Trevor's sister." And she looked briefly surprised in that way people do when they've been told something that doesn't match what they expected. And then she just said, "Oh, how nice." The toasts started. Melissa's sister gave one. Her best friend gave one. Trevor's college roommate gave one. My dad gave one, holding the microphone with both hands, looking at my brother with his whole face open and soft. Nobody mentioned me. I'm not saying they should have. I'm saying nobody did. I ate the salad. I drank my water. I watched my brother dance with his new wife from across the room, the strobe lights catching them in fragments. I watched my mom wipe her eyes. I watched Linda hold court at table 1, glowing, laughing, touching everyone's arm. And I thought about the $4,900, not out of anger. Not yet. More like it rose up into my mind the way a fact rises up when you finally stop avoiding it. A simple number. A plain fact. $14,900. Given over 4 years in pieces, quietly, without ever once making him feel small about it. I had a folder on my laptop at home. I'd started keeping track 2 years ago, not because I'd ever planned to do anything with it, but because a coworker had told me after a bad experience with her own family, just document it, even if you never use it. Every transaction, dates, amounts, text messages where he'd asked. A few emails. 3 times I'd sent him the totals in a friendly way, just keeping track of everything so we can figure out a plan when things settle down, and he'd responded warmly and vaguely and then nothing. The song changed, a faster song. People flooded the dance floor. I picked up my phone and opened my banking app. I sat at table 11, next to the service corridor, and I looked at the number. And then I opened my email and I sent myself one message with the subject line, Monday. Sunday came and went. I drove home 2 hours in the dark, alone, the radio off. Monday morning I called a lawyer. A friend of mine from college had used one for a small claims matter and said she was straightforward and didn't waste her time. I explained the situation. She asked if I had documentation. I said yes. She told me my options. Over the next 3 weeks, I had a formal demand letter drafted. It was polite, it was professional. It laid out the amounts and the dates and referenced the messages where Trevor had confirmed the loans. It gave him 30 days to respond with a repayment plan. The lawyer mailed it to his home address. I didn't tell anyone in my family what I was doing. Not my mom, not my dad. I just went to work every day and kept my head down and waited. Trevor called me on a Wednesday evening, 14 days after the letter arrived. I could hear it in his voice immediately. That tightness, that effort to sound calm. "Hey," he said. "Hey," I said. "I got a letter." "I know." There was a pause. "This is from a lawyer, Laurel." "I know." Another pause, longer. "Why didn't you just talk to me?" And here's where I surprised myself. because I had rehearsed this conversation in my head at least 40 times, and in every version I either cried or went cold, or said something pointed and satisfying. But what actually came out of my mouth was very quiet and very true. Trevor, I've talked to you about this 3 times in the last 2 years. You agreed with me every time and then nothing changed. I don't think talking is the problem. He was silent. I sat at table 11 at your wedding. I said, next to the kitchen. I didn't say anything because it was your wedding day and I didn't want to make it about me. But I've been not making things about me for a very long time, and it hasn't gotten either of us anywhere. I heard him exhale slowly. Melissa's mom handled the seating. I know. I didn't. He stopped. Started again. I didn't know until we were already there. And you didn't come find me to say that. Another silence. This one felt different. Heavier. I didn't know what to say, he finally said. I sat with that for a moment. Part of me wanted to let him off the hook. That's the part that's been letting him off the hook since he was 10 years old and broke my CD player, and I told my mom I didn't know what happened to it. I need a repayment plan, Trevor. I don't need it all at once. I'm not trying to destroy you, but I need something real with dates and amounts that we both agree to. That's all the letter is asking. He said he needed time to talk to Melissa. I said okay. My mom called me 4 days later. I knew from the first syllable that someone had told her. What is going on, she said, between you and your brother? I sent him a repayment request for the money he owes me. Through a lawyer, so it's formal and we have a record. She was quiet for a moment. Then, Laurel. He just got married. I know. I was there. Table 11. What, that's not fair. Which part? She made a sound I'd heard before. That specific frustrated exhale she uses when she thinks I'm being difficult and doesn't want to say so directly. He's trying to get his life together. I know. I've been helping him do that for 4 years. That's what the letter is about. You're going to cause a rift in this family over money. And I thought about how many times I'd heard that kind of sentence growing up. Don't make waves. Don't cause problems. Keep the peace. I'd kept the peace so long I'd confused it with actual peace. Mom, I said, there's already a rift. I'm just the first one to say it out loud. She didn't call back that day. Melissa reached out a week later. A text, short and to the point. Can we talk? Just us? We met for coffee on a Saturday at a place halfway between our homes. She looked tired. She wrapped both hands around her cup and looked at me for a long moment before she said anything. I didn't know about the seating until 2 days before the wedding. She said. My mom changed it. I found out and I wanted to fix it, and Trevor said there wasn't time, and I should have pushed harder. I'm sorry. I believed her. The thing about Melissa is that she doesn't perform. She sat there looking genuinely ashamed, and I felt something unclench in my chest. I appreciate that, I said. The money thing? She stopped. Took a breath. I didn't know how much it was. Trevor told me he borrowed some money, but he didn't tell me the total. When I saw the letter, She shook her head. I'm not going to make excuses for him. I'm not asking you to. He's going to pay you back, she said. I made sure of that. We put together a plan this week. He's sending it to your lawyer Monday. I looked at her for a moment. How are you doing with all of this? She laughed, a short, tired laugh. I married someone who had a debt I didn't know about, so. You know? Yeah. We sat there for a while. It wasn't comfortable exactly, but it was honest, and that felt more valuable. The repayment plan came. $500 a month for 30 months, with a catch-up provision if his income increased. My lawyer reviewed it. It was real and it was signed. I'm not going to tell you it felt like winning. It didn't feel like winning. It felt like setting something down that I'd been carrying so long I'd forgotten it didn't belong to me. My dad called me the following week. Not to yell. To say, very quietly, that he hadn't realized how much I'd been doing behind the scenes for years, that he was sorry he hadn't paid more attention, that he loved me. I cried on the phone. I didn't expect to. I don't know what my relationship with Trevor will look like in a year. He's texted twice since the repayment plan was signed, once to confirm a payment went through, once to say he hoped I was doing well. Both times I wrote back something short and genuine. We're not close right now. Maybe we will be again someday. Maybe we'll find a way to be honest with each other in a way we never were before. I don't know. What I know is this. I went back to that venue website after the wedding. Just to look, for some reason I can't fully explain. They have photos on the website, big, beautiful reception shots, all string lights and golden hour. In one photo in the very back corner, blurred and half cut off by the frame, you can see a woman in a green dress sitting alone at a table. You can't see her face. That's table 11. I looked at that photo for a long time. And then I closed the tab and I paid my rent and I called a friend and I went outside. The thing nobody tells you about finally saying enough is that it doesn't feel like revenge. It doesn't feel like the end of a movie. It's quieter than that. It's just you, with a little more room to breathe. It's just realizing that for the first time in a very long time, you're not sitting next to the trash can. And you're not going back. I've thought a lot about what it actually means to be kind versus what it means to be convenient. For a long time I confused the two, and I think a lot of people do. Being kind is a choice you make with your eyes open. Being convenient is what happens when you keep saying yes because saying no feels like too much to explain. For 4 years I was convenient. I don't say that to be hard on myself. I say it because it's true. And I think the truth is the only place you can actually start from. Every time Trevor called with a number and a reason, I said yes because I loved him and because I genuinely wanted things to work out for him. That part was real. But somewhere in the middle of it, I stopped asking whether any of it was working out for me. I stopped noticing that the giving was only going one direction. And when you stop noticing that, you don't disappear all at once. You disappear slowly in small moments. Like sitting at table 11 at your brother's wedding while your whole family laughs at table 2 and telling yourself it doesn't matter. It mattered. The thing about cause and effect is that it's not dramatic. It doesn't announce itself. Trevor didn't sit down one day and decide to take advantage of me. He just kept accepting what I kept offering, and I kept offering it because I'd taught him, without meaning to, that there were no consequences for taking. That's not a moral failing on his part alone. It's something we built together over years, out of love and avoidance, and the particular kind of silence that families maintain to keep the peace. The letter I sent through a lawyer wasn't revenge. I want to be honest about that. It was just the first time I introduced a consequence. And consequences aren't punishment, they're information. They tell people where the edges are. Trevor didn't know where my edges were because I'd never shown him. That's on me, what I've learned. And I don't mean this in any kind of grand, sweeping way. I mean it in the small, daily way that actually changes how you live. Is that integrity isn't just about being honest with other people. It's about being honest with yourself first. It's about knowing what you're actually okay with and what you're only pretending to be okay with. The gap between those two things is where resentment lives. I had a lot of resentment I hadn't named yet. Naming it wasn't comfortable, but it was necessary. Melissa sat across from me at that coffee shop and said she was sorry, and I believed her. That required something from me too, the willingness to receive honesty instead of defaulting to more silence. Resilience isn't just about getting through hard things. It's about staying open enough on the other side to let the right things back in. I don't know where Trevor and I will land. I hope somewhere honest. I hope somewhere we can both say the real thing, instead of the easy thing. That's the only version of closeness I want anymore. Not the kind that depends on me making myself smaller to maintain it. Table 11 is behind me now. I'm not going back.